Let's jump into the Human Design Starter Pack. Um, so I teach a lot about human design and I teach it by creating stuff. So I've done a lot of different free workshops in the past and I'm really trying to refine what I'm doing. And so the Human Design Starter Pack is kind of a merge between several things that I've created in the past because I love them and they can be more polished. And so I'm working on that. So thank you for joining me and let's dive in. Um, so if you don't already have your human design chart, great places to go are going to be my website, humandesignself.com. There will be a tab on the top that says chart generator. And you can get a body graph style chart, which it will look similar to this behind me, but it's going to be in color. And it will also have the information like your profile, environment, strategy, authority, things like that. I also have on my website a mandala style chart, which I don't actually have one printed out behind me, but if you've seen the ones that look more like, oh, there's one right here on my shirt. Yes, this is a mandala style chart. This is actually my chart. And if you get one of these on my website, that you'll be able to see the planets, the gates, all different things. So if you have any background in astrology, that's going to be a really helpful chart to have. And that's also on my human design chart generator at humandesignself.com. Other places you can go if you haven't already found that. Karen Curry Parker's site is freehumandesignchart.com. You can get a chart generated there. You can also go to Genetic Matrix, Human Design America, or My Body Graph. These are all great options. There's also an app on, I believe it might be iPhone. No, there's Android and iPhone. It's called Human Design App. You'll notice it's got like a blue background. That's my favorite human design app. There are other good ones, but that's my favorite. So, human design is a synthesis of multiple self-knowledge systems from Western astrology, the chakra system, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, even genetics. The thing is, it is a channeled system. So the sum of the parts are not, it doesn't always come back to what the parts actually are, right? It doesn't always make sense. So as a channeled system, it came through a particular person called Ra. At the time, his name was Alan Krakauer. He, in future, went by Ra Uruhu. This was in 1987 in Ibiza. And at he had this mystical encounter with a being he called the Voice, and he took notes and had this fully formed system just drop in. And over time, people noticed that it had many similarities to astrology, Kabbalah, etc. And yet, it is its own system. It is its own thing. Now, Ra passed on in 2011. And since then, many of his original students, like Karen Curry Parker and Richard Rudd of the Gene Keys, have evolved his system and continue to share. And so a lot of uh, my teaching around human design comes from post 2011 things. While I have spent some time with Ra's materials, I tend to prefer the things that are a newer perspective because I do believe that these systems are meant to evolve and change as we are evolving and changing. The split that has been happening in humanity for about since 2011 uh, means that things are different. I'm sure you feel it too. The world is moving at a much faster pace and manifestations are more rapid, things are happening. We are much more in tune with our nature as dual beings, soul and body. We're not just looking at ourselves as like meat suits, and we're recognizing that there is a lot of intelligence in our physical form. All of this stuff human design speaks to in a beautiful way. And so the evolution of that is really evident in some of Ra's students' materials. Um, and so human design is a system, it's a tool. It doesn't have anything to do with belief. So it doesn't matter if you have any, you know, beliefs around that are going to interfere. It's really just a system of knowledge that in my opinion, I'm a big fan of take what you need and leave the rest. And so one of the core tenets in human design is that we have no choice. This is a common phrase bandied around in the human design communities, and I do take issue with that. But I also see and acknowledge where and why and how it does have some validity and truth. So we're going to get into that. All right. So, on topic for today, we're going to talk through the anatomy of a human design chart. This is actually my son's chart. He's a reflector. So, we track the transits through his chart. So, that's something fun to do. But we're going to talk through what all that means. And we're going to go through type descriptions, aura mechanics, energy flow in the chart, our motor centers, and how energy moves through us. And then we're going to go for the gifts and fear of each type. So there's a lot happening here. And if we get to it, I will also talk about strategy and authority, which is the best human design hack. But we may not have time. So let's see. All right, a little bit about me. Why listen to me? So my perspective is self-empowerment through the lens of human design. I am a 6'2" self-projected projector. I am 10 years into my experiment. I did hear about human design 10 years ago. Ignored it for about a year before I really started taking it seriously. I have a background in lots of systems, the Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, astrology, and the gene keys. And I have also been actively working on empowerment and expansion of consciousness work since 2010. And I'm a mama of five. I have a background in birth work and holistic healing, and I have unschooled my five children over the past over 20 years now. All right. So, anatomy of a chart, the centers that we have, there's going to be 9 centers, and they're going to be either colored in. The color actually doesn't matter. It just depends on who's generating your chart. Um, so they're either colored in, which is defined, or white, which is open or undefined. And then there's little numbers on them. Those are gates, and they may be active with a colored circle and a line coming from it, or dormant, which is they look white. Um, it doesn't mean that you don't have those gates. It means that they're not defined or active in your birth chart. This is another nuance that I love about human design that we're going to talk about more later. We all have the whole chart. Now, when two gates touch or combine, we get a channel. And when you have a channel connecting two gates, the centers on either end of those are also going to be defined. And so you might want to think of the chart as like a circuit board in electricity where things are either on and flowing or off. And um, and off doesn't mean permanently off. Off just means it's not consistent for you at that time. So our chart is an imprint of the energies that were coming in, the neutrino stream that was coming through the planetary activations at the moment of our birth, and the place and time of our birth. And it also incorporates our design date, which is a date about 88 days prior to our birthday. So I love this bit about human design because it acknowledges the astrology of our physical body. So yes, our consciousness perhaps came in at this specific time. And then also our physical body was being formed before we were born. So really ties in with my perspectives on birth work and consciousness in that realm. And I think that it's really important that we acknowledge the intelligence of our physical body, right? There's so much work out there about somatics and embodiment now. And so we're waking up to this. And I really love that human design speaks to that. So things like the planetary transits do influence us. Other people, relationships very much influence us. And the more white your chart is, the more openness, the more likely you are to be impacted by your relationships and the planetary transits. If you have a lot of definition, a lot of channels, a lot of centers defined, you're a little bit more self-contained in who you are, but that doesn't mean you're not impacted. So that's just a general rule. And now we're going to get into type and aura a little bit. So type is foundational in human design. Generally, when someone asks you, for your chart, what's your human design? You'll want to say your profile and your type. And so profile is the numbers that come with your chart. For me, it's a 6-2. And then your type is going to be manifester, generator, or Manny-Gen, which is a subtype, manifesting generator, projector, or reflector. And so out of the whole population, we have about 35% Manny-Gens, manifesting generators, and another 35% generators. So about 70% of the population are those two types combined. Then we also have about 20% of folks being projectors, and that leaves about 10% left. So it's about 1.5% reflectors and 8.5% manifestors. So the aura of a generator and or a Manny-Gen, it feels like this cozy, warm campfire. It's magnetic, it's attractive. There is a warmth coming from these folks, and their aura operates in such a way that it's very kind of grounding and almost giving to other people. Especially the folks like me, projectors, we tend to gravitate toward generators and Manny-Gens because they have this consistent energy. And projectors and all to a lesser degree manifestors, but projectors and reflectors specifically, they tend to borrow or amplify the energy of the generators and manifesting generators in their lives. And so that can be it's a community sharing of energy. In contrast, a projector's aura, it tends to feel a little bit intense, laser focused. It's like a spotlight or being on camera. Projector auras, they tend to work best one-on-one, or in this case, camera on one, where we can pour into a single person and be very precise and specific in who we are talking to. And that can feel sometimes a little bit intense, like you're being X-rayed. And so projectors need to be aware of the impact that their focus has on other people. And that is where their strategy comes into play. Again, something we'll talk about later. Then the other two auras, manifestor auras and reflector auras, it's interesting. I hear a lot of folks talk about them as different, like very, very different, and they are. But in terms of the aura type, manifestors have what is sometimes referred to as a closed aura. I like to visualize this as like a castle walls. Not everybody is welcomed in. That doesn't mean it's not beautiful and amazing in the castle, but there is a solid boundary that they're not for everybody. The warmth of a campfire can radiate out and touch people even if they're not intimately connected with the generator or the Manny-Gen. Whereas a manifester, maybe it takes some time to get to know who they are because they have this very firm boundary around their world. It's self-contained, it's solid. And interestingly, reflector auras, now a reflector type, they have no definition in their chart, completely open. Um, but that doesn't mean that they are just constantly getting buffeted in the flow of other people's energy. Interestingly enough, when no centers are defined, what we have is this effect. And so there's a softness and a strength that the reflector aura carries that kind of makes it similar to a manifester in that nothing really sticks to a reflector. Their aura is, it's been called a Teflon or a non-stick aura. They're very adaptable. The way that I like to picture their aura is like a bubble matrix, where an individual bubble might be soft and permeable and delicate, but when you put a lot of them together, there's like this dense foam and it can be very solid and nothing can really get through unless the reflector wants it to be. And so, in that way, I do see some similarities between the reflectors and the manifestors. And in fact, I know many, many people who are reflector manifestor relationships that get along quite well, whether it's a romance or a friendship. My reflector son's best friend is a manifestor. And it's one of those things that is interesting. They work really well together. Those types, the manifestor and the reflector, tend to be more impacted by the planetary transits. They are more self-contained, whereas the projectors, the manifesting generators, and the generators are going to be more impacted by relationships and people and environment. So being in a place with lots of people, or being in intimate relationships, whether it's with the right people or the wrong people. There's big impact around that for those types, the generators, the mani-gens, and the projectors, especially the projectors. So when we're talking about human design, this is the place where I wish I could show you a slide. Basically, what we have are certain centers are called motors. The defined sacral of the mani-gens and generators is kind of our main motor in human design. It drives life force energy. It's really the energy of action, doing, and also creativity. And it's kind of the thing that runs life on our planet, right? So whether you have a defined sacral or an undefined sacral, sacral energy is having an impact on your regular life. And then there are also three lesser motor centers, the emotional solar plexus. So if you have emotional authority, if you've seen that in your chart, about half the population has that. And so that means you have a defined emotional center. That's another motor. The other ones are the ego center and the root center. So any of these four motors, they provide the energy and the drive and the flow and the right timing of action in our chart. Think of it kind of like there's almost like a pressure to do, right? Energy to do, ability to do. That's what the motor centers provide in our chart. However, in order to create and make something happen with that energy, the motors have to have an energetic flow outward, right? So that we can express and make things happen. The the center that makes things happen, that manifests our creativity out into the world, is our throat center. And so in human design, we look at, does a chart have a connection between a motor center, one of those four, either the sacral or the others, and does it connect to the throat center? Now, only the only people that have a connection in their chart, a motor center to the throat center, are going to be our manifestors and mani-gens. That's the manifesting and manifesting generator, which means literally the energy is flowing to our creative center where we can express it. I create as I speak, abracadabra. This is the flow of energy through our chart, through our motor centers, and out through our throat where we can express it. And this doesn't have to be verbal, it can be writing or art or anything that you're creating, building. But why would that be only for the manifestors and mani-gens? It's almost like we're designed to be an interconnective, co-creative species because most of the time for the generators, the projectors, and the reflectors, which is quite a lot of the population, their motor centers, I don't really come online in full expression to be able to bring that energy out and into the chart through the throat unless they are in combination with other aura types. And so chart mechanics change when we are in relationship with other people. So it's not just as simple as, oh, this person has these centers and this person has those centers, and so combined. We have to look at the individual gates, and so it can be really helpful to generate a combination chart and see what centers come online in your relationship and what things are being expressed or able to express when we are in the auras of others. But generally speaking, when we have two or three people together, we have much more impact, exponentially more impact than just what we have contained in our chart, in our own chart. And so this is why human design is really helpful to look at the relationship dynamics and the co-creative forces that are available to us through motor to throat connections. Now, again, I said when we have, regardless of what's going on in our chart, let's say you have only one motor center, maybe you're a projector and you only have your emotional center defined. Very common configuration. It doesn't mean you don't have energy. It just means that perhaps you need to be in relationship with people in the right connections, environments, in the right rooms in order to really fully express and have access to the full range of what you have to offer in your creativity. And so even if you have no motors defined, I'm actually a no motors projector. All I have is my G center and my throat defined. And what that means for me is when my aura combines with other people, then it depends on what other things come online in our charts, right? And so what I have is intermittent flow of energy through those motor centers. In fact, through all of my undefined centers, there's an intermittent or changeable, mutable energy that comes through. Because depending on the transits, depending on the people I'm around, depending on the conditioning I've received over my life, these centers will work in different ways. So it's not like it's neutral or you're missing that energy, right? We're all always going to have these co-creative connections in our flow of energy. Um, and yes, manifestors and manigens are the only ones that have a motor to throat connection. Specifically, folks who have the 2034 channel. In other words, it's the only channel. Oh, hi, kitty. It's the only channel that goes from the sacral directly to the throat. Those folks have the true, like the purest form, hi, of creative energy. The 3420 manigens. And that can be a very powerful, potent placement for these folks because for all mani-gens, they have the ability to um, make things happen, right? They have the energy, the motor energy, as well as the defined throat for expression of that creativity. The 3420 mani-gens, the best way I can explain them is they get a thought and they have to do it. No talking, no thinking, it just thought, action. It's very quick, and that's due to that instant connection between the sacral through the gate 34 and the throat through gate 20. All right. So we talked about some of that. All right. Let me take a drink, and we're going to get into the gifts and the fears of our types. All right. So generators. Generators have that defined sacral, right? So if you have a defined sacral center in your chart, regardless of anything else, you're either going to be a generator or a manifesting generator. Generators have consistent stamina and energy to do things that they love and find valuable. Notice I did not say that they just have energy all the time. It has to be something that there's a buy-in personally, emotionally for them. In terms of, oh, I agree with this mission. I agree with what we're doing. This feels important to me. Maybe you don't like it, but you see the need. You agree with the mission, like the operating instructions of what's going on. So perhaps um, you have a job that's challenging and physically demanding, but you know and believe in the work you're doing in terms of it's important for the human collective. You'll have the energy generally to do that job, even if it's challenging as a generator. The energy of generators has to do with commitment. So they only know what's correct for them in response to their environment. So a generator is designed to wait for things to respond to. But remember, I said that the defined sacral, it's magnetic, right? And so one of the biggest challenges for generators has to do with trust because they the conditioning of our world is very manifestor coded. It's just do it, push, go forward, make it happen. And generators, really, hardly any of us are designed for that. In some situations, not even manifestors are designed for that. It just depends. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But generators are not meant to do that. What they are meant to do is trust in the magnetism of their aura, which is constantly bringing them people, experiences, ideas for them to respond to. And so a generator might be in a situation. My husband is a great example of a generator responding to things. He is a plumber. He'll go to Home Depot to pick up a part, and he just can't help but notice someone in the aisle struggling and just looking really confused. And so he'll very gently come up and say, "Do you need a hand? Um, do you have any questions?" And they'll just kind of tell him what's going on. And before he knows it, he has a client they, because he helps them and he doesn't say anything. But then they're like, wait, can I hire you? And so he's kind of creating things to respond to by being perceptive and trusting in that generator magnetism. And it's well done. Not everybody can do that, right? We've had projectors are not wired that way. They can't necessarily insert themselves into a situation like that and get a good response. But generators, with their warmth and their magnetism, that works well for them a lot of times. The generator energy, the way that that aura feels, it's like a sacral buzz. Think of like a purring motor or a beehive, the warmth of that energy, right? There is a consistency and a flow there. And ideally, the energy of generators has to do with follow through, sticking with a project and seeing it evolve and transform over time. Another thing with generators is they will be highly impatient and they might drop a project because they'll hit a plateau and they'll feel like nothing's happening and I don't know what to do. And so maybe they abandon it prematurely. This is something I've had to encourage my generator children to stick with it, to give it some time, take a break, but don't stop, right? Don't drop it forever. Drop it for a little while and then see what else shows up in your environment that you can respond to. And often what happens when they do that is some new bit of information or some new inspiration, someone they meet comes into their world and they get re-inspired of, oh, I have a new angle of how I can tackle this project. And then they are progressing again. And so things like skills that you build over time and you need to practice. This is a correct use of energy for generators because often what they're doing is building something steadily, brick by brick, consistently over time. And their response, it's got to stay relevant, right? So maybe they enter into a situation that it was good in the beginning, but then along the way, as they were building, something changed. The vibe is off, or the priorities of the person in charge shifted, and they're not feeling it anymore. That is something that generators can recognize as, oh, I'm not like this is no longer aligned for me. And they can make that decision to move on, hopefully gracefully. But a lot of times generators think, I've got to stick with it. I've got to keep going. And that's often when they get frustrated. That's where that energy of frustration will come online for them. Ideally, generators are feeling satisfied with the work they do and being very active, doing, right? To where they are tired at the end of the day and they fall asleep really fast. That's how you know that mechanically your aura is doing the right work for you, where you're able to fall into bed feeling satisfied, but also you can fall asleep really quickly. If you have a generator child who is having trouble falling asleep, it's often that they need to be more busy during the day. So, Manigen gifts. Uh, Remember, the Manigens are the ones that have a motor to throat connection. So they have that consistent energy, whether it's from the ego center to the throat, the emotional center to the throat, or perhaps the root coming through the emotion, or even the splenic center can go that way as well. But they also have a defined sacral. So it's a little bit tricky to discern this. But Manigens, they have the defined sacral center like a generator, but they also have the motor to throat connection. They're kind of a hybrid between the manifester and the generator. Many gens carry the gift of efficiency. They can pivot at light speed, they can skip steps, and then if they decide later, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, they'll go back and do the steps. But they're very adaptable, they're very quick-witted, they're very they can be both soft and strong. A lot of times they have a lot of charisma, a lot of drive. Perhaps this is expressed outwardly, or perhaps this is more of an internal thing for them. There's many, many, many different types of generators. What I was saying before about the 3420 Manigens, the ones that had that direct channel from sacral to throat, this is where a lot of the manifest or Manigen descriptions come from. Oh, they're so fast, they're so charismatic. Well, yes, but if you're a Manigen that doesn't have that specific activation, the sacral connected to the throat, your energy may express a little bit differently. And so I've seen very many, there's a wide range of Manigens, and so not all of them will resonate with that stereotypical description, which is more the 3420 Manigen. Generally, Many gens can be this example of our highest human potential because they have the benefits of two charts in one, really. They have they have the motor to throat connection and the defined sacral. So they have the create as I speak, the drive, and the willpower, whatever it is, the emotional connection. And then they also have that consistent life force energy that the defined sacral provides. So they can be, depending on your definition, meaning that's getting into more complicated things. They can be fairly self-contained, or they can be more wanting to work in connection with other people. Generally, they're very adaptable. They have a lot of there's a lot of flexibility in a Manigen chart. Because Manigens move fast and change their mind a lot, one of the judgments that they may get from others, perhaps even in childhood, and so they kind of internalize it, they can perceive themselves as flaky or they quit things too fast. And the thing is, Manigens need to remind themselves that it's okay for them to change their minds and to pivot. This is actually how they're designed. Um, one of my kids is a Manny Gen. She's an emotional Manny Gen, which kind of adds a layer to it because if you also have a defined emotional center and you're a Manny Gen, there's almost like this push-pull of energy where you want to go fast. But also, your emotional center tells you, like, well, I should wait and take my time and feel it out, right? Wait for that wave of emotions to kind of feel through. We don't want to make decisions when we're like at the height of emotions or at the depths, right? We don't want to anchor in our high points or low points if we have emotional authority. And so my daughter she's changed her mind a lot and she changes her mind quickly. And it's this push-pull of do I wait and honor my emotional authority or do I honor my Manigen, my sacral of when I know I know? And so that's been an interesting challenge for her to navigate because there's this push-pull energy. So, all right. So the big fear around life for both generators and manifesting generators is that nothing good will happen to them unless they initiate it, unless they push for it, unless they make it happen, right? They're the Nike slogan, just do it. But that's actually more of a manifester style. And as I said, the whole world is conditioned with like manifester propaganda. Um, and so it's important for the generators and the manifesting generators in our lives to know that when they say yes to things without honoring their sacral response, their gut level of like, I like this, or like, I don't know. It's a physical, felt sensation in the body. If they don't honor that, if they do it from the mind, if they're like, oh, well, this is very logical and I ran all the calculations and I should do this, then they're making decisions from their mind. And when they do that, they will find themselves resisting what they've committed to. And then they, depending on what's going on in their chart, this it might even cause them some shame or some feelings of conflict, right? But when generators and manifesting generators can trust that their divine sacral is magnetic, it's bringing them aligned opportunities, people, things all the time, then they can end up doing things they value, trusting themselves to say yes to the right projects, and they will experience this deep satisfaction in their lives. Sacral beings tend to be conditioned to act against their true nature, which is in response to life, not pushing forward and making it happen. All right, now we're going to talk about manifestor gifts. Hang on. So, as I said, manifestors are the only type that's actually designed to push forward, initiate, just do it. But there's a lot about manifestors. I actually believe that manifestors are well, one of the most deeply conditioned, other than projectors. Manifestors and projectors are very heavily conditioned by society because there's also there's a lot of conditioning in our general society about work ethic, make things happen, be consistent. That's actually the generator propaganda. Not everybody's designed to be consistent. Manifestors don't have a defined sacral. If you're a manifestor, you have an open or undefined sacral center. And you also have a connection between one of those lesser motor centers in your chart and your throat. So they have this big impact of being able to speak reality into existence, but they don't have the consistent sacral drive and energy to accomplish it all on their own. And ironically, manifestors are some of the people who bring forth the biggest and most amazing visions and projects and experiences into the wider collective. So lots of people that are like very visible in our culture were manifestors. They are making things happen on a grand scale. And often, what needs to happen for these folks is other people kind of have to have the buy-in and believe in the manifestor's vision in order to help contribute to what's happening or what they want to come through to create. So manifestors, by nature, are meant to be independent, natural leaders. They impact other people, even when they're trying not to. They have a big energy about them. And this is true for manifesting generators as well. There's a big energy. They move through life and they think that they're being like stoic and stealthy, but everybody's watching them. Everybody is going, wow, they're just what's going on over there? They tend to have an impact even when they're not meaning to. Manifestors like to be able to initiate things, strategize. They're also very efficient. And in the case of manifestors, a lot of times that conditioning that they've gotten is slow down. You're too much. Hold back. Don't do so much. Like, you're too much. A lot of manifestors, especially in childhood, they get that. Manifestor children are very, they can be an intense parenting experience. And not because anything, not because they're doing anything wrong, but they're just, when you're a child, you're naturally embracing whatever your energy is, right? And manifestors have a big energy. They have a big impact on all the people whose lives they touch. And of course, that starts with their parents. Manifestors have this desire for freedom. And a lot of times, the conditioning that I've seen happen to these beautiful manifestors in the world is that through the messages they've received in their lives through childhood, they are turning down their own energy, their own muchness to the point that they're kind of there there's an anger that comes from manifestors and it's like they internalize it. They're angry at themselves. They're like, why can't I just be like what everybody needs me to be or wants me to be? And they can shrink themselves to try to fit. And this is deeply damaging for manifestors to live like that for a long time. They are meant to be loud and weird and outrageous and doing what they feel drawn to do. They don't have to wait for other people. Again, they have that motor to the to throat connection, right? So maybe they have a feeling and they want to express it, or they have like something shows up and they believe in the cause and they have the willpower and it's connected to their throat. They want to just make it happen. And so they move fast when they're aligned, but if they have had a pattern where they are um other people in their lives are being upset by them moving fast and maybe not saying what their plans are, not including others. Um, for instance, children, manifestor children, they tend to just you'll find them and they're doing some elaborate thing that they haven't asked permission for. Why do they have the scissors? What's going on? And they have their own tangent of what they want to do. And it can be really challenging because you're like, wow, wait, but you didn't ask me and we don't have time for doing this right now. And what if you get hurt, right? And over time, that pattern can show up as I just can't do anything without upsetting people, so I'm not going to do like there's just like an apathy that can show up for manifestors. And a lot of manifestors, when they first get their chart and they read all this rah-rah stuff about their initiating and vision holders and manifesting reality, they don't really vibe with that because they have been so deeply conditioned from an early age to shrink themselves. And so I think sometimes manifestors get the most out of human design because it can be very healing to kind of just be affirmed that you're not bad or wrong for wanting to just have the freedom to do things on your own and in your own way and in your own timing. And so the manifestor's biggest fear is really being controlled by others or being shut down by others. And sometimes they shut themselves down to avoid being angry at other people. So when they are able to feel safe enough to share their plans and their ideas with their loved ones without fear of them getting mad at them or trying to shut down, hi, Shetsi, um, then they are able to avoid going into stealth mode and be more open about what they're wanting to create and making it happen, and perhaps even getting support from their loved ones instead of getting questioned and shut down and people being irritated with them. So, the signature of a manifester who's not in alignment is anger. You might have even seen this on like an initial chart readout. What do you mean anger? I'm not angry. What it also can mean is that it's something that people respond to you with. So, like for projectors, that would be bitterness, and for generators and mani-gens, that would be frustration. For reflectors, that would be disappointment. These are also things that we can perceive other people feel about ourselves. So, all right, now we come to projector gifts. Hey, that's me, as well as some others in our chart, in our chat. So projectors are actually the newest type. We're relatively new to the planet. Hey, we're like the babies of the human design world. Projectors have an undefined sacral center, and they can kind of have any other configuration in their chart going on. The defining thing is no motor to throat connection and no defined sacral. That's what makes a projector. So if you're a projector, you might be emotional, you might not be. You might only have two centers defined in your chart. That's like I do, so lots of openness. Or you might have six or even seven defined centers. Um, you might have more definition, more, let's say, stability, groundedness in your chart, right? That consistent flow of energy in those places. So projector charts, there's a wide variance of what they can look like, but some common themes are going to be that projectors are meant to be in positions of leadership or else guidance. So it might not look like on a podium leading people, but it might just be that you are a guide, perhaps to your children, or perhaps in your job, you have some sort of a role of mentorship. Projectors have a gift for understanding the other. They're, as I said, our auras are deeply penetrative. We work best one-on-one with people. And we tend to also have a gift for mastering and improving systems. So we tend to be able to see the bird's eye view of, oh, this is the whole thing, and this is how and why it's working and where it's not. And hey, I have some ideas for improving it. But not everybody is going to be receptive to the projector coming in, mastering the whole system really quickly, and then saying, hey, let's change it. So projectors, they tend to be diplomatic. Um, they often notice things that others miss. Um, and they do inherently understand how to guide and organize other people and their energy in order for maximum impact. However, as I just said, sometimes that gift is not well received. And so that is why the projector's strategy is waiting for the invitation. I have seen people take this to the extreme. I have to be waited to get, inviting. I have to wait for the invitation to get out of bed in the morning or to do anything. Am I invited to start a new hobby? It's not that deep. The projector invitation has to do with more the big things in life, our relationships, job offers. Perhaps we only get an impactful invitation once, every few years, or perhaps really only once in a lifetime. One of my favorite projector stories is about, oh my gosh, I can't remember his name right now. The lead singer of the band Rammstein. He is a projector. He's a 5-1 projector. Um, he is a guy that he was actually working in a flower shop in his, I think, early 40s. And he was just, the door was open. It was a lovely day. And he was singing along with the radio. And some guys on the street are walking by and they come in the flower shop and go, you have an amazing voice. Do you want to be our lead singer? And that's how the lead singer of Rammstein got his job as frontman in his 40s. So that's the kind of thing where out of the blue, you're just doing your thing, having a good time, ideally, right? Just enjoying whatever it is that you're doing is going to result in people noticing you and inviting you into correct situations. And then, of course, it's still down to you to choose to respond. Do you actually want to do this? Because sometimes an invitation isn't aligned, right? Um, some projectors feel like nothing's going to happen for them, and so they say yes to everything. And then they burn themselves out. They end up doing, doing, doing instead of guiding. And we don't have a defined sacral. We're not really meant to burn ourselves out doing tiny tasks, even though we can see the big picture and we know what needs to happen. We're not meant to be in the grind making all those things come into play. And so not every invitation that a projector receives is going to be something that we want to say yes to. And so a projector's biggest fear is that either they're lazy, dysfunctional, or that they have this need to help because they're so worried about not getting the right invitations that they say yes to everything, or they overextend themselves. So there will be like this energy of desperation from projectors. Maybe they're overfunctioning, they're doing too much, they're inserting themselves for guidance when it wasn't asked for. Perhaps it comes off as know-it-all energy, or maybe it's not well received. Um, and so the challenge for projectors is finding something to do that they love, that they care about, and just kind of focusing on building that up quietly and trusting that that they'll be noticed, that they'll be receiving the right invitations. And so that doesn't mean writing in your journals and never sharing them with anyone or never posting pictures of your art, or it means that you've got to show up. You've got to be visible to where the collective can see you. And the thing about projectors is they tend to be, again, people who, not that they make an impact, but that they're noticed. Um, Heads turn toward projectors. There's such a thing as the projector stare. There's an intensity in their gaze, and they tend to ask questions and really want to get to know other people. So there is a certain magnetism that projector auras bring in, but it's like you can't help but turn and see who's in the spotlight over there because they have a spotlight on them at all times, and it just being comfortable with that and being willing to share without expectation, without desperation, that is the challenge for projectors. And so that can show up as bitterness in projectors when we do and do and do and push and um, offer things. And then it's not received well, or we don't get the invitations that we really want. Or worse, we get the invitation, but it's like a fraction of what we were hoping for. And so very often projectors end up compromising. They say yes to things that are like a 6 out of 10 when really they were wanting for that 8 or 9 or 10. And that can be another thing to watch out for because we don't have consistent energy. We need to honor that fact in us. And so you might, I don't have a lot of, I'm not doing consistent posting on Instagram because I just don't have it in me. I've got 5 kids. Like, I don't have that to give. And so I'm trying to be very intentional with when I have the energy and the inspiration to share these things, I'm going to come on and do it. But I'm no longer available for just giving impromptu readings all the time or sharing everything. It can be very challenging to pull back and to trust that the right people are going to see me. But that is my very vulnerable share of working with that projector fear of what if I'm lazy? What if I'm dysfunctional? What if I just, you know, have to push harder? And I'm really working on trusting that the right invitations will come to me if I show up in integrity, in alignment. So, ideally, when projectors can wait for the right recognition and the right invitations, the ones that recognize us for who we are rather than all the tasks we can do. Um, that way they're able to accept these correct invitations, not the ones that make us act like generators or manifestors, but the ones that recognize and appreciate the guidance that we have to offer and allow us to be our full human self in the capacity that we have to give, not being expected to keep up with the rest of the busy, busy world. So that is how a projector is ideally designed to experience success. So finally, let's talk about the reflectors. As I said, I have a reflector son, and so I'm very glad that I came into the human design world when he was just 4 years old, and so he is. I do believe he has benefited enormously from my being willing to look into his design so deeply. So reflectors, again, their chart is very open. They have no defined centers. They have no inner authority. Their authority is lunar, which is to wait a lunar cycle. There's a lot of waiting with reflectors. They tend to be on a slower wavelength than the rest of humanity. They want to take their time and they observe group dynamics. They're kind of a little bit off to the side, checking things before they feel ready and interested in fully participating. But ideally, the reflector is meant to be in the center of a group, in the hub. Like everybody's connecting with them and they are offering their insights and their ideas, and kind of everybody is recognizing themselves in that reflector because they value harmony. They are able to kind of sample things out. They take it in, feel it, and then they go, "Oh, that's not for me," or "Oh, this is nice. I like this." And so they're able to kind of move through a wide variety of people and take in a wide variety of lessons, energies, experiences, emotions, which makes them be able to really relate to a lot of different people. So ideally, they're meant to be in the center of a thriving community where people value their insights and ideas. The gift of a reflector is their resilience, which they actually have in more capacity than any of the rest of us, despite all that openness in their chart. Remember, I said when it's like all that openness, it functions in such a way that there's no hooks, there's no defined center with a hanging gate that wants to magnetize. There's like they're able to take it all in and then release it all, like step back and be in their own space. My son actually has a shirt that says, "I need my space." And because he can be very much a different person, say with his friends or with in a group setting versus alone. And reflectors do need to be able to take time to discharge from all that energy that they take in order to kind of find themselves again and be grounded in who they are. And so just knowing that, for instance, if they're in the grocery store and start feeling sad or confused or angry or whatever, it might not be their stuff. It might be the environment they're in, right? And so being able to raise my son with that awareness that, hey, not everything you feel is natively yours, has been really helpful for him because he knows, oh, if I'm unclear about something, I'm gonna go be by myself in my lovely curated room. And he does. He's very much aesthetics and environment can be very important to reflectors. Being in an uncomfortable living situation is physically, it can be like damaging to their physical health. And so, especially for reflectors, projectors too, anyone with a lot of openness in their chart, it can be very challenging to be in a situation that's like chronically wrong for them, whether that's a relationship that's challenging or whether it's living like in the wrong environment, or this could be like moving houses or rearranging your furniture or moving cities or countries. Like there's many layers of this. Changing your clothes, right? That could even be a layer of environment. So reflectors, they're very discerning. They can discern subtle things about people, relationships, their environment, their home, and they reflect and amplify these qualities. So generally, when you meet a reflector and they seem happy and aligned and content, you know that their environment, their relationships are probably pretty good. But if you meet a reflector and like things are challenging for them, they're having some struggles with things, then you know that something about the people, the place, the things in their environment are going to be off. And so a healthy and happy reflector, ideally, they're going to feel delight and surprise moment by moment, and they naturally uplift people with their presence. But an out of alignment reflector, they're going to feel almost invisible, or they might even reflect whatever's going on in their environment. So perhaps they're angry like a manifester, or they're frustrated like a generator, or they're bitter like a projector. They are kind of moving through the and sampling the energies of perhaps all the types over a lunar cycle. But again, there's consistency in the flow of their months. So if you're a reflector, there's a lot more I could say about that in terms of tracking the transits and journaling, and that's a topic for another time. But suffice it to say, they're kind of like all the types rather than um, as much as they are their own type. There's a lot of variance there. So a reflector's biggest fear or challenge is going to be around feeling excluded and invisible to other people. Reflector conditioning is often stop being so slow, hurry up, get a move on. And they end up trying to kind of merge with other people in their world. They'll say, oh, so and so seems to have it all together. I'll be like them. And so they end up taking on the personalities of other people in an effort to be liked or accepted. This can be very challenging because they don't have, especially a young reflector, they may not have the discernment. Okay. They may not have the discernment of, oh, this is me versus this is not me. Um, and interestingly enough, when a reflector is trying to mimic other people, it tends to make them invisible. And I've seen this happen where even, someone else will say the same thing that the reflector just said. And everybody didn't even hear, like he didn't even say it. And then 2 minutes later, another person says the same thing. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, sure. Oh, wow, that's amazing. And it's like they feel like they're left on the sidelines and they're invisible. And this can be very deeply disappointing. Um, and the disappointment is also, it's not just, oh, I'm bummed out about I missed out on a social thing. It's this more broader, big picture. I'm disappointed in the state of humans and the way that the world is. Like it's a very like heavy, broad, pervasive disappointment that can show up. And so a reflector needs to be in the right environment, and they also need to be in relationships where people recognize and honor their need for taking time and changing their mind about decisions. Reflectors are, my son has said that one of the worst things is pressure to choose now. He hates that. It's very frustrating. And not to say that they should never do that because we live in the modern world and it is what it is. But especially for the big decisions, excuse me, especially for the big decisions, reflectors are going to want to take their time and really allow themselves to feel the full flavor of the changes in their chart over the lunar transits for about a month, that maybe at least a month, maybe longer, before they really know what's true and what's right for them, to be able to disengage with from the auras of others and come back to clarity within themselves so that they can start feeling surprised and delighted by life and people and all of the very varied opportunities that are there for them. All right. This has gotten to be a really long video, actually. I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I think I've talked a lot today, and thank you for being here with me. And I guess I'll stay on a little bit and see if anything else shows up. Hi, Nicolette. I'm pretty much wrapped up for now, so but the replay will be up in a few moments, and I think this was really fun. I think we'll do this again sometime. I can yeah, I think I'm gonna do more of these. This was really fun, and I'll be able to post them on my profile and see what shows up. But all right. Thank you for watching. And again, if you want to get your chart, go to humandesignself.com and join my email list. And so we'll keep in touch. Thank you. Mwah.